The morning sun peeked through the curtains as Mom wheeled herself to the kitchen window. Her new home in Sunnyside Estates looked perfect on paper: single-level living, wide doorways, and a community that promised accessibility for everyone. After 30 years of teaching second graders, retirement with multiple sclerosis wasn't what she had planned. But Mom never complained. She just adjusted, like always. "Look at that view," she said, pointing to the small garden outside. "I'm going to plant those purple flowers you brought last week." I smiled, helping her with breakfast. 3 months ago, I'd spent my savings to move her here after Dad passed away. The brochures showed smiling folks enjoying community barbecues and accessible walking paths. What they didn't show was Mr. Henderson, the HOA president who ran this place like his personal kingdom. The doorbell rang. Outside stood a short man with slicked back hair and a clipboard, wearing a polo shirt with HOA embroidered on the chest. "Good morning," he said without smiling. "I'm here to discuss the unauthorized modifications to your property." Mom looked confused. "Modifications?" "The ramp," he pointed to the wooden wheelchair ramp I'd built last weekend. "It doesn't match our community aesthetic guidelines." I stepped forward. "That ramp is necessary for my mother to enter and exit her home. She's in a wheelchair." Henderson's face remained blank as he handed me a thick packet. Page 47, Section 12B clearly states all exterior modifications require pre-approval from the Architectural Committee. The fine is $200 payable within 14 days. After he left, Mom's shoulders slumped. "I don't want to cause trouble, honey." "You're not causing anything," I said, flipping through the ridiculous rulebook. "This place was supposed to be accessible, that's why we chose it." The next day I submitted proper paperwork for the ramp, and for the bathroom grab bars, and for the doorbell with flashing lights for when Mom couldn't hear well on her bad days. Each form came back stamped "denied" in angry red letters. When I called the HOA office, the secretary sighed. "Mr. Henderson has final say on all modifications." At night, Mom whispered her fears. "What if they make me leave? Where would I go?" I squeezed her hand. "This is your home now. Nobody's making you leave." But the notices kept coming. $300 for wind chimes that exceeded the ambient noise regulations. $150 for flower pots that weren't the approved terracotta color. $250 for a bird feeder that attracted non-approved wildlife. Mom stopped going outside. She watched her garden through the window instead. "Maybe I should just pay the fines," she said one evening, counting the money from her small pension. "Those fines aren't legal," I argued. "They're targeting you." But I couldn't prove it. Not yet. Other neighbors kept their distance, eyes down when we passed. Whatever Henderson was doing, it had everyone scared silent. Then came the community meeting. I sat beside Mom's wheelchair at the back of the room while Henderson discussed important matters like approved mailbox finials and correct garbage bin placement. When the floor opened for questions, I raised my hand. "My mother has been denied basic accessibility modifications. Isn't that against federal law?" The room went quiet. Henderson smiled thinly. "Your mother signed our covenants when she purchased her home. Perhaps she should have read them more carefully. Or perhaps," he paused, looking directly at Mom, "she should consider a more suitable community for her special needs." Several neighbors looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to speak up. One elderly man finally stood. "My wife needed a ramp last year when she broke her hip. The committee approved it within a week." Henderson's smile disappeared. "Different circumstances. Next question." Walking home, Mom was quiet. Too quiet. "We'll figure this out," I promised. She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. This wasn't just about rules anymore. This was about making her feel unwelcome in her own home. What I didn't know then was how far Henderson would go, or that someone important was already watching him. The violations piled up faster than autumn leaves. Mom's medical alert button necklace, unapproved jewelry display in public areas, the textured doormat that helped her know where to position her wheelchair, non-standard floor covering. Each Envelope brought new knots to Mom's shoulders. Her doctor noticed too. "Your blood pressure is concerning," he said during her checkup. "Are you under unusual stress?" Mom just smiled weakly. Moving is always stressful. But it was more than that. She'd stopped inviting her friends over, stopped joining the community coffee mornings, stopped being herself. I tried reasoning with Henderson directly, catching him outside the community center. "Look, we can paint the ramp to match the house color. We can modify whatever you want, but Mom needs these accommodations." Henderson checked his watch. "The rules apply to everyone, no exceptions." "But other residents have ramps," I pointed out. "I've seen them." "Those were approved through proper channels," he replied. "And they're temporary. Your mother's condition appears permanent." The way he said condition made my blood boil. That night I searched online for disability housing laws. Words like reasonable accommodation and Fair Housing Act jumped out at me. We had rights, Mom had rights. I printed everything and showed her the next morning. "We can fight this," I explained. "What they're doing is against federal law." For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in her eyes. Then the certified letter arrived. The HOA was placing a lien on Mom's house for unpaid fines, now totaling over $4,000. "They can't take my home, can they?" Mom whispered. I called 3 lawyers before finding one who would talk to us. Mrs. Patel listened to our story, her frown deepening. "This is textbook discrimination," she said. "But fighting HOAs can be difficult. They have deep pockets and most people give up." "We're not giving up," I replied. Mrs. Patel nodded. "Good, because what you've described sounds like a pattern, not an isolated incident." She agreed to take our case but warned it might get worse before it got better. She was right. The next morning, Mom called me in a panic. "They've done something to the ramp," she cried. I rushed over to find heavy chains wrapped around her wheelchair ramp, secured with a padlock. A laminated notice hung from the chain. "Access restricted pending payment of outstanding fines." Mom was trapped inside her own home. "I need to go to my doctor's appointment," she said, voice shaking. "How am I supposed to leave?" I called 911. When the paramedics arrived, they had to dismantle part of the porch railing to get Mom out. One paramedic shook his head in disbelief. "Never seen anything like this," he muttered, helping Mom into the ambulance. "You should report this." At the hospital, Mom's blood pressure was dangerously high. The doctor kept her overnight for observation. I returned to her empty house, staring at the chains that had imprisoned my own mother. With shaking hands, I took photos for evidence, then called Mrs. Patel. "They've crossed a line," she said, after seeing the pictures. "This isn't just discrimination, it's elder abuse and false imprisonment." That night, as I sat beside Mom's hospital bed, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was unfamiliar. Whistleblower FBI.secure.gov. The message was brief. "Not the first time. More victims. We've been watching Henderson for months. Call this number tomorrow." I looked at Mom, finally sleeping peacefully thanks to medication, and realized our fight was about to get much bigger than we ever imagined. I couldn't sleep that night, staring at my phone and the strange email. Was it real? FBI agents don't just send random emails to people, do they? But then again, nothing about this situation was normal. Morning light barely filtered through the hospital blinds when Mom woke up. The doctor said her blood pressure had stabilized, but she needed to avoid stress. "Avoid stress," I repeated with a bitter laugh after the doctor left. "How exactly are we supposed to do that?" Mom reached for my hand. "Maybe we should just move, find another place." "And let them win? After you spent your life savings on that house?" I shook my head. "Besides, who's to say they won't do this to someone else? Someone who doesn't have anyone to help them fight back?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I just want to go home." "I know," I said, squeezing her hand, "and we're going to make sure you can." After breakfast, I stepped outside to call the number from the email. My hands were shaking. A woman answered on the second ring. "Special Agent Taylor." My heart jumped into my throat. I got an email about Henderson, the HOA president." "Can you meet this afternoon? Bring any documentation you have." 3 hours later, I sat in a small coffee shop 2 towns over, across from a woman who didn't look anything like the FBI agents in movies. No dark suit, no earpiece. Just a woman in jeans and a sweater with alert eyes that missed nothing. "We've been building a case for 14 months, she explained, sipping her coffee. "Henderson has done this at 3 different communities." She showed me photos of other ramps that had been removed, other elderly or disabled residents who had suddenly moved away after months of harassment. "Here's the pattern," she continued. "Henderson targets vulnerable homeowners, usually elderly, often disabled. He uses fake violations to pile on fines until they can't pay. Then they sell at a loss just to escape." "And who buys the houses?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "Companies that trace back to Henderson's brother-in-law, a developer. They flip them for profit. It's elder abuse, wire fraud, and civil rights violations all wrapped into one neat package." My mouth went dry. "How many people?" 27 victims identified so far. Your mother makes 28. I pushed across my phone with photos of the chained ramp. Agent Taylor's expression hardened. "This is their most aggressive move yet. They're getting bolder." "What do we do now?" I asked. "We need your help. We're close to making arrests, but we need evidence of their internal operations." She explained their plan. It wasn't without risk, but if it worked, Henderson wouldn't just be stopped. He'd face serious prison time. I thought about Mom, about her garden she couldn't tend, about the chains on her ramp. "I'm in," I said. "What do you need me to do?" Back at the hospital, I didn't tell Mom everything, just that I'd spoken to someone who could help, and that we needed to document everything, every letter, every fine, every interaction. "Like collecting evidence?" she asked, eyes wide. "Exactly like that," I said. "You always said your second graders learned best when they had to play detective." For the first time in weeks, Mom smiled. "Well, I guess we're both going to be detectives now." 2 days later, she came home. The chains were gone, removed by anonymous neighbors overnight, but the damage to the ramp made it unusable. Mom's face fell when she saw it. "How am I supposed to?" "I've got you," I said, lifting her from the car to her wheelchair, then carrying her up the steps. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would work until we figured things out. Inside, the house felt different. Colder, like it wasn't really ours anymore. "They can't win," Mom whispered that night as I helped her into bed. "Not just for us, but for everyone else too." I nodded, thinking about the 27 other victims who hadn't had someone to fight for them. The next morning, I got to work. Agent Taylor had given me a small recording device hidden in a pen. "Just keep it in your pocket during any HOA meetings," she instructed. My opportunity came sooner than expected. Henderson himself knocked on our door that very afternoon. "I understand there was some unpleasantness, with your ramp," he said, looking past me into the house. "The board felt perhaps we've been too rigid in our enforcement." His sudden change in tone made my skin crawl. "Is that right?" I asked, slipping my hand into my pocket where the recording pen sat. "Yes," he smiled without it reaching his eyes. "We'd like to offer a compromise. The HOA will approve your ramp if you'll drop any complaints you filed, and of course pay the outstanding fines." I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my voice steady. "And if we don't?" His smile vanished. "Then I'm afraid the next step is foreclosure proceedings." Behind me, I heard Mom's wheelchair approaching. "You would take away an old woman's home?" she asked, her voice stronger than I'd heard in weeks. "Because of a ramp she needs to get in and out safely?" Henderson's eyes narrowed. "Rules exist for everyone, ma'am. No exceptions." As he walked away, Mom looked at me. "Did you get that?" I patted my pocket. Every word. What we didn't know was that Henderson had already started moving against us, and that time was running out faster than we realized. The next day brought a certified letter that made Mom's hands shake. "They're starting foreclosure proceedings," she whispered. "Can they really take my house? Over some fines?" I called our lawyer right away. She arrived within the hour, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the foreclosure notice. "This is premature and likely illegal," she finally said. "But we need to act fast. They're counting on you being too intimidated to fight back." Mom straightened in her wheelchair. "I taught 7-year-olds for 30 years. It takes more than a bully with a rule book to intimidate me." Our lawyer smiled. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." She drafted an emergency injunction that afternoon. We'd have our day in court, but it would take time during which Henderson could cause even more damage. I met Agent Taylor at the same coffee shop that evening, passing her the recording pen. "This is good," she said after listening, "but not enough. We need proof of the connection between Henderson and the property company buying these homes." "How do we get that?" She hesitated. "There's a HOA board meeting tomorrow night. We know they discuss their problem residents then." "You want me to go?" I asked. "Not just go, we need you to wear a wire." My stomach dropped. "Isn't that dangerous?" "We'll have agents nearby, but yes, there's risk involved." I thought about Mom, trapped in her own home by chains, about the 27 other victims who had given up and moved away. "I'll do it," I said. The HOA meeting room was packed the next night. I sat in the back, trying to look casual while wearing a thin wire under my shirt. Henderson led the meeting with his usual smug authority, discussing lawn height violations and improper mailbox colors before moving to resident compliance issues. "The situation at 1624 Maple Avenue remains problematic," he said, not looking at me directly, though everyone knew he meant Mom's house. "Legal proceedings have commenced." A woman raised her hand, Mrs. Chen from 3 doors down, who always waved to Mom but never stopped to talk. "I don't understand why we're punishing someone for having a wheelchair ramp," she said, voice trembling slightly. "My husband might need one someday." Henderson's smile was cold. "The issue isn't the ramp itself, but the failure to follow proper procedures." "But I heard they submitted paperwork multiple times," someone else called out. Henderson's face flushed. "We're moving to closed session. General members are dismissed." People shuffled out, some avoiding my eyes, others giving sympathetic glances. I made to leave too, then ducked into the bathroom instead. After counting to 50, I slipped into the supply closet next to the meeting room, where a thin wall allowed me to hear everything. "The Thompson woman is becoming a problem," Henderson was saying. "People are asking questions." "Just stick to the plan," another voice replied. "Once we foreclose, my company buys at auction, and everyone gets their cut." "And if they keep fighting?" A cold laugh. "Nobody has the money or energy to fight an HOA for long. They'll give up." I recognized the second voice from somewhere but couldn't place it. I pulled out my phone, using the camera to peek under the door. If I could just see who was speaking. The door swung open suddenly. I tumbled forward, coming face to face with Henderson and 5 board members, plus the town's deputy mayor, who I now recognized as the second voice. "Well," Henderson said, eyes glittering with anger, "look who we have here." 2 board members grabbed my arms. Someone found the wire. "Spying on a private meeting," Henderson tisked. "That's trespassing, criminal behavior." The deputy mayor stepped forward. "This is unfortunate, very unfortunate." My heart hammered against my ribs. Where were the FBI agents who were supposed to be watching? "Let's not do anything hasty," the deputy mayor continued. "I'm sure we can come to an arrangement." "I don't make arrangements with criminals," I replied, hoping my voice sounded braver than I felt. Henderson stepped closer. "Your mother will lose her house. You'll face criminal charges. Is that really the hill you want to die on? A wheelchair ramp?" The door burst open. Agent Taylor stood there, badge raised, flanked by 4 other agents. "Federal agents, everyone stay where you are." The grip on my arms loosened instantly. "Right on time," I said, relief washing over me. The Deputhis briefcase, but another agent intercepted him. The morning after the arrests, reporters swarmed our street. News vans with tall antennas parked alongside curious neighbors who suddenly found their courage. Mom watched from the window, overwhelmed by the attention. "I never wanted to be on TV," she murmured. I squeezed her shoulder. "You don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to." She thought for a moment, then straightened her back. "Actually, I think I do. Other people need to know they can fight back." That afternoon, she gave one interview from our living room. She didn't mention her health struggles much. Instead, she focused on the rights of homeowners and the importance of standing up to bullies. "I'm just an old school teacher," she told the reporter. "If I can stand up to them, anyone can." The story spread like wildfire. By evening, our phone was ringing nonstop. Other victims, not just from our community, but from all over the state, wanted to share their stories. Agent Taylor visited the next day, bringing coffee and donuts. "You've started something bigger than we expected," she said, showing us newspaper headlines. "People are coming forward everywhere. HOA abuse cases, elder discrimination, housing, fraud." "How many?" I asked. "Over 50 new cases since yesterday, and counting." Mom's eyes widened. "All because of us?" "Sometimes people just need to see it's possible to fight back," Agent Taylor explained. "You gave them hope." She shared more details about the investigation. Henderson's scheme went back 15 years across 4 states. His brother-in-law's development company had made millions buying homes at reduced prices after owners were harassed into selling. "And the town officials?" I asked. "The deputy mayor was getting kickbacks to fast-track zoning changes for the properties after they were acquired. We're still unraveling who else was involved." That night, Mom couldn't sleep. I found her in the kitchen at 2 a.m., old photo albums spread across the table. "What are you looking for?" I asked, making us both tea. She pointed to a faded photograph. "This was my first classroom back in '82. See this little boy? He grew up to be a lawyer. I wonder if he'd help others like us." The next morning, Mom made calls to former students. By afternoon, 3 attorneys had volunteered to help other victims navigate their cases. Mom's dining room became an impromptu headquarters, with a rotating crew of visitors sharing stories and strategies. Mrs. Chen from down the street brought homemade cookies. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner," she admitted. "I was scared of losing my house too." "We were all scared," Mom said, patting her hand, "but we're not alone anymore." A week after the arrests, we received another visitor, the county judge overseeing Henderson's case. She came unofficially, after hours, to see Mom. "I taught her son 20 years ago," Mom explained after the judge left. "She wants me to testify about what happened to us." "Are you up for that?" I asked, worried about her health. Mom nodded. "I need to do this. For all of us who were too afraid to speak up." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following month. Meanwhile, more victims joined our growing community. Some had lost their homes. Others had paid thousands in bogus fines. All had stories of intimidation and fear. One elderly gentleman broke down in our living room. "I sold my house for half what it was worth just to escape them. Now I live in my daughter's basement." Mom held his hand. "We're going to make this right." Agent Taylor kept us updated on the investigation's progress. Each day brought new revelations: secret bank accounts, offshore holdings, doctored HOA records. "We found evidence they targeted specific homeowners," she told us. "Anyone, vulnerable, elderly, disabled, single parents, military spouses with partners deployed overseas." "How did they choose who to target?" I asked. "They had help from inside the banks, loan officers sharing financial information, flagging homeowners who might struggle to fight back." The web of corruption seemed endless. Each thread they pulled revealed new conspirators, new victims. 2 weeks after the arrests, our lawyer called with unexpected news. The court had frozen Henderson's assets, including his real estate holdings. "They're preparing to sell everything to create a victim compensation fund," she explained. "Your mother could get her fines refunded, plus damages." "I don't want their money," Mom said after I told her. "I want justice." Our lawyer smiled. "Sometimes justice comes with a check, and that's okay too. You could use it to make your home truly accessible. As the case expanded, so did media interest. A national news program wanted to feature Mom's story. She hesitated until they mentioned their angle, exposing HOA fraud nationwide and helping other victims come forward. Then yes, she decided. I'll do it. The night before filming, Mom seemed nervous. Do you think we're doing the right thing, making such a public stand? I thought about the growing stack of letters from other victims, the phone calls, the tears and thanks. I think we're doing exactly what you taught all your students to do, I said, standing up for what's right even when it's scary. Mom smiled, the worry lines easing from her face. Then let's give them a lesson they won't forget. Part 6 through A. Courtroom felt impossibly large the day of Henderson's hearing. Mom's wheelchair sat in a special section near the front, where she could easily see and be seen. I sat beside her, holding her trembling hand. There are so many people, she whispered. The room was packed. Victims from all 4 states had traveled to witness the proceedings. Many were elderly. Some came with oxygen tanks or walkers. All had the same determined look in their eyes. Henderson and his co-conspirators sat at the defense table, surrounded by expensive-looking lawyers. He didn't look our way once. The judge entered, the same woman who had visited our home, though today her face showed no recognition. She was all business as she called the court to order. The prosecutor presented the government's case. The scheme had affected over 200 homeowners across 15 communities. Total financial damage exceeded $30 million. But the emotional toll was incalculable. And now, the prosecutor said, we'd like to call our first witness. Mom squeezed my hand one last time, then wheeled herself to the witness stand. She looked tiny there, facing a room full of strangers and the man who had tried to take her home. Please state your name, the court officer instructed. Mom spoke clearly into the microphone, giving her name. When asked to describe what happened, she didn't just tell her story, she told everyone's story. It starts with small things, she explained. A fine for a flower pot, a notice about your mailbox. You think if you just follow their rules, they'll leave you alone, but the rules keep changing. Her voice grew stronger as she continued, describing the isolation, the fear, the feeling of being trapped in your own home. When they chained my ramp, she said, they weren't just blocking my way out. They were sending a message. People like me don't belong in their community. The courtroom was silent when she finished. Even the defense lawyers looked uncomfortable. Henderson's attorney tried to paint the whole thing as a simple misunderstanding during cross-examination. Isn't it possible, he suggested, that this was just a strict interpretation of community guidelines? Nothing personal? Mom looked him straight in the eye. When you chain someone's wheelchair ramp, it's always personal. After Mom's testimony, other victims took the stand. Each story followed the same pattern but carried its own heartbreak. A retired veteran who lost his service dog because of fake pet violations. A widow forced to sell the home she had shared with her husband for 50 years. A young mother with cancer who had to choose between paying HOA fines and medical bills. During a recess, the prosecutor approached us. The judge is impressed with your mother's testimony, she said quietly. And Henderson's lawyer is suddenly interested in discussing a plea deal. Does that mean no trial? I asked. It means they know they're losing. The evidence is overwhelming. When court resumed, the judge announced that proceedings would be continued the following week. As we left the courtroom, victims surrounded Mom, thanking her, sharing hugs and tears. One elderly woman bent down to Mom's wheelchair. You gave us all our voices back, she said. That night, over a dinner brought by neighbors who had finally found the courage to befriend us, Mom seemed thoughtful. I keep thinking about all those people who had to move away, she said, who lost their homes. Where did they all go? The question haunted me too. For every person who could travel to the courtroom, how many others were still suffering in silence? The next day brought unexpected visitors, 3 members of Congress who had been following the case. They wanted to meet Mom and discuss potential Legislation to prevent HOA abuse. We're calling it the Homeowner Protection Act, one explained. It would create federal oversight of HOAs and establish clear penalties for discrimination. Mom listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions about enforcement and accessibility requirements. By the end of the meeting, she'd been invited to testify before a congressional committee. Me? In Washington? She laughed in disbelief after they left. I haven't been farther than the county line in years. You're changing the world from your living room, I told her. Imagine what you could do in Washington. 2 days later, Henderson's lawyer contacted the prosecutor. They wanted to make a deal. Agent Taylor brought us the news personally. Henderson will plead guilty to all charges in E.